Salutations! Welcome to Loving the Language of Literacy. My name is Sophia Lee, and today I'll be discussing Anything Could Happen by Will Walton. Two things before I start this video. Number one, I received this book in exchange for an honest review from the publisher, and number two, I'm currently filming this on the 9th of April, and this doesn't come out until the 26th of May. So, time travel is awesome. Anything Could Happen follows a teenage boy named Tretch, who in the middle of church one day figures out that he is gay. And this wouldn't be so much of a problem if, number one, he didn't live in an extremely small town and it might not be exactly socially acceptable. And number two, if he wasn't in love with his best friend, Matt. And his story is one of just love and discovery and friendship, basically any other story that we could be a main character for in terms of a society as teenagers. LGBTQ fiction has become something extremely relevant. There have been a lot of books trying to incorporate it in, whether the fact that the main character is LGBTQ is either the main conflict or problem of the story, or whether it's just a side note. Anything Could Happen is the former, and my favorite book for the latter is Proxy by Alexander London, because the main character kicks so much ass in the dystopian post-apocalyptic kind of world, and he just happens to be gay. Personally, for me, LGBTQ books are hit or miss. Unfortunately, Anything Could Happen happened to be a miss, and I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. My feelings for it were extremely mixed, mostly because I felt that it was juvenile in some points. I am 100% against all people of any age, any background, any whatever, loving adult literature. I felt that the writing style and Trench's narration was just cliche and overdone. While I'm personally not gay and I have not experienced so many of the obvious problems that people who are experience, I still think that it could have been written differently and more originally, because it seems almost as if it was transcribed from one of those handbooks from the 20th century that go, what to do when your son or daughter is gay. Ironically, there were some really good quotes, and I'll have those posted on my blog. I felt that it had a lot of explosive scenes that were just in your face, and they would have been well received, at least by me, if there had been more build-up to them and they hadn't been so out of the blue. I just thought that Anything Could Happen was all over the place in terms of just setting, as well as the content and the context of all these explosive scenes. Overall, I think that the story that Will Walton set out to tell was a very good one. It was just a matter of me personally as a reader not liking or enjoying the way that he did carry out his premise, but I feel if you want to explore the LGBTQ genre, if you just want to find out more and educate yourself, this is definitely a good example of a book for you to read. And if you haven't read this book, I would advise you to read it and come back so we can discuss it. So goodbye, non-spoilery people! First, I want to talk about Tretch as a character, because obviously the most common LGBTQ setting for a book like this is in a small town, and that's where Tretch is. And I felt like his coming out to these people, such as his brother, Matt, Lana, should have been a little bit more explosive. And while I'm extremely glad as a reader that our society has progressed so much that it doesn't have to be such a big explosive thing, I felt like that the build-up and the setup for the story should have warranted a bigger reaction. Because of that, I was like, did I get the wrong message for what this book is supposed to teach me as a reader? And if so, what is this message that Will Walton was trying to convey? There was also the matter of his unrequited love for Matt. And while I do realize that it was the climactic turning point in the story, I feel like he kind of got over his crush a little bit too quickly. He was just talking about himself loving Matt the entire time, and then when he finally realized that it was, one, okay to be gay, that Matt would still think him absolutely fine and his best friend, that there should have just been more to it. What I did love about Tretch as a character was his ability to dance and what dance did for him. I myself, as a reader and an introvert, read books because I want to either escape or I want to relate. And it's just, for me, even though reading is soaking information, it is a way to communicate with others and the world outside of what I'm just living in day to day. And that's what dancing was for him, because it was such a way for self-expression and no matter what he was doing, he was so confident when he was dancing. And especially I loved it in the end when he was the one to bring Lana out onto the dance floor and they just kicked off the New Year's Eve party, because I've been in those settings before where everyone's kind of timidly standing at the side of the room going, I don't want to be the one to start this, but someone finally does and they get all into it. But if they hadn't otherwise, it would have been the worst dance ever. And I felt it was so awesome that he was the one to do this, as well as the fact that he finally performed the Anything Could Happen dance. Then there's the issue of Matt and Amy, and while I did feel that it was good to have the whole Matt and Amy relationship dynamic, I also felt like it was a plot device, because it was kind of needed to just push Tretch in the direction of figuring out that he was in love with his best friend, and it also presented him with the problem of, oh my god, I'm in love with him, but he is in love with Amy. It just didn't feel right to me, especially after the New Year's party when he just asked Matt about what he felt concerning him moving, and then he was like, oh yeah, Amy was sad, but then you came and blew everyone away dancing and everything was solved. To me, it was almost as if, why even introduce her as a character if you're going to cut off her arc so quickly? And my favorite character in the story, besides Matt's dads, who were just amazing, was actually Lana Kramer. I was annoyed with her at first. She seemed so forceful with her crush on Tretch, and to me it was almost like, get out of the way because he needs to figure this all out for himself and you're just adding more conflict. But the realization they had at the end, despite Lana liking him and despite the fact that he was gay, their liking each other as friends was not diminished or changed whatsoever because of him coming out to her. And I truly did feel that it was good that he came out to her even before he came out to Matt. The thing that I mostly disliked out of the whole story was its randomness and the way that it jumped completely just all over the place, because we had him jerking off in Matt's laundry room, and I felt this was such a weird decision for the author to make. But obviously, teenage boy, you're gonna jerk off, you have sexual urges. But at the same time, it was like, is this really needed? Did we need this in the story to fully appreciate and absorb it? And then there was the fact that Dennis had PTSD, and the incorporation of Dennis as a character himself, because I felt it was just so random. But at the same time, I felt that it was actually good because it helped with the progression of the story because of the thing that made Dennis different and what he had to cope with, which was the PTSD, versus Tretch having to cope and deal with the fact that he was gay. And there was the whole calf birthing thing, and I kind of understand new year, new beginning, new life sort of trend that the author was following. But at the same time, it was like, okay, we need to go wake up at like 4 in the morning on New Year's Day just because we need to birth a calf. Lastly, there was the really random Hendel rage where he just wrecked Tretch's book, and I felt this was just kind of a plot thread that Walton needed to just tie up really quickly, and so he put it on the last page as the way to resolve everything. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Tell me in the comments below if you've read it, if you've just heard about it, if you're anticipating it. I want to know all your discussions and thoughts and feelings, because they could be completely different or parallel to mine, and I really want to know. Keep calm, read on, and I'll see you in a video soon. Goodbye!